Hi, and welcome to Thor's Day Comics. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Star and the Solar Legion. I'm also the author of WITCHMAN, a new superhero comic that just had a successful Kickstarter campaign. So here it is, Thor number 133, Behold the Living Planet. And just spectacular cover with this sort of painted quality with the added, gray tone washes, just giving a real depth to the color, very classical look. You could hang this in a museum. And this is actually the second version of this cover. There's an earlier version of the cover that got rejected. And some people say the theory behind why it was rejected is that Jack's drawing of this, of Ego, this character called Ego, who's just, this representation of a massive ego, looked a little too much like Stan Lee. Another early, funky Flashman commentary, maybe subconscious on Jack's part, maybe deliberate, or maybe just, pure coincidence. The Mighty Thor, Behold the Living Planet. Star-studded script, Stan Lee. Planet-pounding penciling, Jack Kirby. Real Rigelian rendering, Vince Colletta. Lots of little lettering, Artie Simic. Possibly the most daringly imaginative saga you have ever marveled at. And I'd agree with that. It's been all highs for the past bunch of issues, starting with Absorbing Man and then segueing into the Hercules stuff and Ego the Living Planet, some of the all-time great comics. And we have the Recorder with his chest open with all this computer stuff going on. The Recorder would just, make an amazing toy of the ilk of like the $6 Million Man figure where you can remove parts and see all the bionics underneath. And the Recorder looks a little different than in the previous issue. He's a little more muscular, head's not as large, and this is sort of, the classic look that the Recorder will have. Now we're going to see what these two are marveling at. This magnificent double-page splash of Ego the Living Planet, the surface of the planet. I love all these little different zones that are made up of, different kinds of shapes. We have these hexagons, sort of like beehive look here, these eggs over here, this, thing with all this stuff sticking out of it, and then just the color treatment, this amazing color treatment. And I was thinking, as I was going through this issue, in these Marvel movies, this kind of color is such a big part of the appeal of these comics, and it's thoroughly lacking, with the exception of Thor Ragnarok. But yeah, this is just beautiful. And the double-page spreads of this era of Jack Kirby, they're not quite double-page spreads. There's a little gap in between, but this is obviously meant to be read as this full image. And then there's the little figures of Thor and the Recorder. This wasn't part of the previous issue, but now in this issue, we have the Recorder making these little bullet point statements where he says, conclusion, the planet upon which we stand is not merely a receptacle upon which life dwells. It is truly life itself. Here, within the only known bioverse in all of creation, we are in the presence of Ego, the living planet. So you're going to see this verbal tick that the Recorder has where he says, conclusion, question, and another way, I assume this is Stan's contribution, but I think he really did a stellar job of coming up with ways of giving each character a distinctive voice. And this is, very unique. And Alan Moore used it on his Supreme run. He would have the Suprematons, Supreme's robot duplicates, speak in a similar manner. And now we see the face of Ego, again, just like on the cover and just like the collage at the end of the previous issue, sort of rising up from the surface. We see his face, and then he transforms the planet into something where Thor might be more comfortable. He models it after the thoughts that he finds in Thor's head and creates almost like a second Asgard and creates a more relatable version of himself as sort of this golden Asgardian warrior, along the lines of Odin. Observation, being able to reform bioversal molecules, the entity known as ego can reshape matter into any semblance he desires. But for what purpose? Why doth he toy with us in such fashion? It is not for me to say. I may only observe and record, like the Watcher. I like this saddle that's on this horse in the foreground. It kind of reminds me of like the saddle that's on Battle Cat from the Masters of the Universe. And now they're sort of trotting through this, sort of Asgardian looking city. Interesting composition, how, the figures, our focus are way here on the left side, and then the rest of the panel is sort of this, strange architecture, kind of, a bioversal living planet turning itself into, Asgardian architecture. And now we cut back to Earth. Because up to this point, this comic is so divorced from the mundane, more so than is typical in the superhero genre. It doesn't start with him as Clark Kent changing into Superman and doing this and that. We haven't seen Don Blake. Don Blake hasn't appeared, for months, maybe even a year. It might have even been a year since the last time we saw Don Blake. So you have this Asgardian ancient god and an intelligent recording robot talking to a living planet. It's as exotic as it gets. And for my money, that's where I want to spend my time, is in those kind of imaginationscapes. But we cut back to Earth and Jane Foster. What's she up to? Because in a way, everything that Thor's doing, even if it's, galaxies away, it's for the sake of Jane Foster. She's sort of his like solid connection to the Earth. So yeah, he cares about everybody on Earth and wants to, protect everybody on Earth, but the embodiment of that is Jane Foster. And now she's having dinner with that guy who was sitting next to her on the plane, and he's sort of, making a pig of himself. And then this big regal guy, Tagar, shows up. Seems maybe even like Mr. Lion or something, he seems more like a lion than a tiger, but he's got this imposing presence, this very regal presence and commanding, taking everything over. And he wants her to come to become a teacher for them. By the genetic table of the high evolutionary, we must have your services, and have them we shall. So we're hearing about the high evolutionary, just getting this nice tease of what's to come in the next issue. And now we're back, and here's, Ego in his sort of Asgardian form. This was a comic where Jack had drawn, more pages than he could use in this issue. So there's like 1 or 2 pages of pencils that are floating around that seem to, come, right before this moment in the story of Ego doing his Asgardian thing. Ego says, if I can defeat you while in this ludicrous human form, then I can make countless copies of myself and send them throughout your universe. While the real Ego remains within the Black Galaxy, my human form creations shall conquer all. Conquest! Though thou be supreme in thine own world, the madness is upon thee too. Know ye then the hammer of Thor shall strike against thee, whilst life remains within my limbs. Ah, because you see me in mortal form, you have so soon forgotten what I really am. And so now Ego hits him with this, gust of energy as he puts this zap on him that takes a sampling of Thor's DNA, and then he creates his own version of Thor, this kind of humanoid that's sort of part ego and part Asgardian god. Very, very crazy looking. Now we get this cool, cutaway as the recorder, charges up his batteries, because he's like seeing some stuff he's never seen before. So he's just really taking it all in. And Thor gets ready to fight this duplicate, and then everything starts getting weird on the planet. And now now Ego reveals himself in sort of full fury, looking very, Lovecraftian, very terrifying, and looking a little like Stan Lee of the era. And now a giant tidal wave's coming after him. Observation. Nothing occurs upon this planet unless Ego wills it. Therefore it is by his will that a veritable ocean at flood tide now engulfs us. And then they jump into this opening, which is almost like a pore in the surface of the skin. And now we're getting some Fantastic Voyage kind of stuff where we're in like the bloodstream of Ego. And just, panel after panel of just crazy inventiveness, just so beautiful to look at. Kirby just creating this, incredibly exotic world and character out of whole cloth. And now there's multiple duplicates of these sort of viral humanoids. And now a huge pile up. I think this might be, this is a type of panel that, Kirby will do from time to time. This, splash page of one of his heroes battling an army of foes. But this might be the most intense, this is like pushing it beyond the limits, where it's just like this growing pile of bad guys that Thor is fighting and engulfed in. It's really, a great moment in comics history. Thus begins the strangest battle in recorded cosmic history. Antibodies without end, created on the spot by an omnipotent ego, attack the thunder god and his humanoid companion in ever-increasing number. Begone, things of evil. Not all thy masses shall topple mighty Thor. Observation, it shall take more than platitudes to stem this deadly tide. Special Marvel message. Since cameras are expressly forbidden anywhere in Ego's bioverse, King Kirby was forced to draw this inimitable illustration entirely from memory. Hence, if any slight inaccuracies should be noticed, we beg your kind indulgence. Ye old, benign bullpen. And so, the struggle continues. And these are the kind of, this sort of commentary here, that's the kind of stuff that just really, augments this feeling of being part of something, of, that made Marvel extra special, that it could sort of, take a moment out and bask in the greatness of what you're seeing with some humor, and then also, spotlight, the people who are making this stuff, spotlight Jack Kirby. And so the fight continues. Thor's fighting his way through. So he's not only fighting this army, he's also fighting the planet itself. He's getting sucked into some, arterial cavity. Again, just brilliant on the spot, moment by moment invention. What a golden era for Saturday morning. And now we cut back to Earth, this time to Tana Nile, pressing her demands on the people and calling back to Rigel to increase the space lock. And they refuse, and they say, you're done. Earth is off limits. Come back home. Now we're back to Thor in the fight of his life. The recorder gets buried under some rubble. Thor pushes it aside. And thou wert a faithful and true companion, and Thor shalt not desert thee. Observation, for the first time, a recorder feels the emotion of gratitude. And Thor carries his buddy through. Beautiful coloring on this panel, great silhouette work, just really nice, treatment of color there. Carrying his fallen comrade out of there, and escapes, flies off from the planet, and Ego has a sort of cosmic hissy fit. For the first time in countless millennia, I have been bested. Never again shall I suffer such humiliation. Henceforth my bioverse shall be sealed off from each and any known universe. Never again shall I attack Rigel. Never again shall I seek to invade other galaxies. I shall ever be a world apart till eternity crumbles. And now Thor flies off, carrying his buddy. Next issue, the People Breeders. So, we've wrapped up this Rigel story more or less. There's going to be some spillover into the next issue. We've, wrapped up the story of Ego. It's just, Jack's just got so much on his plate, and the People Breed, he's already, they're already setting up the next issue. Everything's in place. Maybe they could have milked the Ego story for a couple more issues, but he probably can't wait to get started on this next bit. Just sort of casually creating, some amazing, unforgettable stuff. A Stan Lee Jack Kirby production, inked by Vince Colletta, lettered by Sam Rosen. May their armor never tarnish. Valhalla. I think this is the introduction of Valhalla in, the Valhalla proper. In the Thor comics, I think they've referenced Valhalla, just talking about Asgard in sort of a general sense, but not this specific definition of Valhalla as sort of the afterlife of the Norse gods. The black stallion of doom awaits thee, master. All is in readiness for thy last adventure. So Harukin, who's got these deathly wounds, is being dressed in this incredibly cool looking armor to sort of ride off on the Stallion of Doom to his death. And I do want, like, he's alive, but barely through this sequence. But I do wonder if, maybe, in the original conception of this, if we could see the original art, maybe he is dead. Maybe they're dressing his corpse and carrying his corpse. I don't know. Like, I just kind of get that impression. Who knows? It's just a thought. So they place him upon the stallion, and Thor and the Warriors 3 are watching all this stuff going on in sort of reverence, this death ritual. But Volstagg is cowering because he sees the approach of Hela, the goddess of death, looking amazing. Another great Kirby design. I think we've seen Hela once before in a Tales of Asgard, not looking quite as grandiose as she does here with her Valkyrie guard, and they're walking, and everybody's turning away from her. No one's looking, except for Thor and the Warriors 3. They're turning their back on this terrifying, the presence of the goddess of death. And, maybe this is just perspective or something, but I mean, she looks to be a giant among gods, and she's walking off, and then, the clouds appear, which are, in Jack Kirby language, in Jack Kirby visual language, smoke, as we saw with the Vision, the 1940s Vision comic that he did with Joe Simon, that smoke is the gateway to other dimensions. And as the smoke parts, we see Valhalla. Behold, another hero come to glory. So the idea that when a warrior dies, if they die a heroic death, if they die a death in battle, they go off to Valhalla, where they can endlessly fight and feast for all eternity. And so they're all there welcoming him, and now he feels the strength returning to his limbs. And again, if it was intended to be sort of a dead man in this fixed armor sitting on a horse, he's coming back to life, or at least getting sort of reinvigorated as he enters the land of the dead. And now he's in full glory here, charging off to his eternal reward, the eternal glory of battle. To arms then, one and all. Let the trumpets blare, let the flags unfurl. The call to battle fills the air. Now shall a warrior ride. And they have a little toast to Harukin. And Volstagg finally comes out of his hiding place. Next, when speaks the dragon. And I can't wait to see what happens with the people breeders and with this dragon, another great Kirby design. I'm Tom Scioli, author of Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics. I am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, and Jack Kirby's Star Warriors, The Adventures of Adam Starr and the Solar Legion. I'm also the author of WITCHMAN, a new superhero comic book, which just had a successful Kickstarter campaign. I'll see you next Thursday.